Okay, so we've all been there, right? That unexpected expense pops up, car trouble, maybe a medical bill that's bigger than you thought it would be, and suddenly you're wishing you had a little more padding in your bank account.
It's the worst feeling, right?
The worst. And that's exactly why we're diving into how to build an emergency fund in less than a year. 12 practical steps today.
Because we've all been there.
It's all about equipping yourself to handle those moments without that feeling of dread.
Yeah, and I think what's important to remember, it's not just about saving money, right? It's about having that peace of mind, knowing that you're prepared.
Exactly. That's what I love about this guide. It cuts right to the chase. A year. That feels doable.
Right. It doesn't feel like some unattainable goal.
Exactly. So let's talk about step one, because it really resonated with me, the idea of defining your emergency fund goal. And I love that it kind of throws out the old 3 to 6 months of expenses advice.
Yes, because it's so arbitrary. Right.
So arbitrary. Like, who are these people with these perfectly predictable lives and expenses?
And honestly, it can feel really intimidating, right? Like, oh, I need 6 months of expenses saved up. That's impossible.
Right. So this whole idea of calculating a magic number based on your actual needs, that felt really freeing to me.
It's so much more approachable. It's like, okay, what do I actually need to feel secure?
Yeah.
What are my real financial obligations?
Yeah, it's not about keeping up with the Joneses. It's about creating a safety net that actually makes sense for you.
Yeah.
So once you've got that number in mind, the guide moves into these next 2 steps, which are all about taking a good hard look at your finances. This is the financial checkup part. And I'll admit, initially I was like, ugh, this sounds kind of scary.
Yeah. No one wants to look at their bank statement sometimes.
Right. But the way it's presented in this guide, it actually becomes empowering. It's not about judgment, it's about gathering information.
Right. Exactly. It's like taking inventory.
Yes, like where is your money actually going?
Yeah. And are there any areas where maybe you could make a few small adjustments, you know?
Exactly. And the guide even suggests using budgeting apps to help with this, which, let me tell you, can be surprisingly fun.
Oh, I love a good budgeting app.
Right. It's kind of like a game.
Yeah.
I recently started using one, and it was eye-opening, to say the least.
Really? Tell me about it.
Well, let's just say, my daily coffee habit was not my friend.
No.
It's okay, I've since made some adjustments.
There we go.
But the point is, once you have that clear picture of your spending, that's when you can start to identify those areas where you might be able to save a little extra each month. And that's what these next couple steps are all about, building a realistic savings plan. And again, the key word here is realistic.
Yes, absolutely. It's not about depriving yourself or becoming a monk. It's about making small, sustainable changes that add up over time. It's about flipping the script, you know.
Whoa, tell me more about this.
Instead of spending first and hoping there's something left to save, you make saving the priority.
I like it.
Yeah.
So we're talking about a mindset shift here.
Exactly. And I think that's what makes this guide so effective. It's not just about budgeting tips, it's about changing your relationship with money.
Okay, I am on board with that.
Mm-hmm.
So how do we actually put this into practice?
Well, that's where steps 4 and 5 come in. They're all about finding those practical ways to cut expenses without feeling like you're sacrificing all the fun in life.
Because, let's be real, no one wants to live like a monk, right?
Exactly. It's about being mindful, not miserable. And this is where the guide gets really specific, which I appreciate.
Oh yeah, give me some examples.
It talks about those small recurring expenses that can really add up over time, like that daily coffee habit we talked about earlier.
Oof, yeah, guilty.
Or those subscription boxes that sound amazing, but you end up using maybe half of the stuff.
Oh, I know, I fell for one of those meal kit delivery services once.
Oh no, what happened?
Good intentions, bad execution. Let's just say I ended up with a lot of wilted vegetables and a renewed appreciation for takeout.
Oh, I've been there.
But you're so right. Those little things can really make a dent in your budget if you're not careful.
Exactly. And what's great is that the guide gives you actionable strategies for tackling them. It even suggests things like bringing your lunch to work a few times a week or finding free alternatives for entertainment.
Okay, those are actually really practical tips.
Right. It's not about deprivation. It's about being smart and making conscious choices.
Love it. So we've tackled the spending side of things, but what about boosting the income side of the equation? Because let's face it, sometimes, no matter how much you cut back, it can still feel like an uphill battle to reach your savings goals, right?
Absolutely. And that's where steps 6 and 7 come in. They're all about finding ways to accelerate your emergency fund growth by bringing in some extra cash.
Now, I appreciate that they don't necessarily use the term side hustle here because let's be honest, that can feel a little overwhelming.
Totally. It can feel like a whole other job on top of your actual job.
Exactly. But the idea here is to be strategic and find something that fits into your life without adding a ton of extra stress.
And I think the key takeaway here is that any extra income you generate, even if it's just a little bit, can go a long way towards supercharging your savings.
Okay, so give me some examples. What are some realistic ways to boost your income without, burning yourself out?
Well, the guide mentions things like freelancing, selling items you no longer need online. There's so many possibilities these days.
I love that idea of selling things online. It's like a double win. You declutter your space and pad your bank account at the same time.
Exactly. And you might be surprised what people are willing to buy. I've gotten rid of so many things I thought were destined for the donation bin and actually made some decent money doing it.
See, that's what I'm talking about. It's like finding hidden treasure.
Right. And that's the beauty of this guide. It's about being resourceful and finding those creative solutions that work for you.
It's funny you mentioned that because that actually ties in perfectly with the next step in the guide, step 8, which I have to admit kind of blew my mind a little bit.
Oh, what's that?
It's the idea of using high-yield savings accounts to make your emergency fund work harder for you.
Oh, yes. This is huge.
I know, right? I've always just kind of parked my savings in whatever account I happen to have at the time, not really thinking about the interest rates.
It's so easy to overlook, right?
Totally. But the way they explain it in the guide, it just makes so much sense. We're talking about compound interest here, people.
It's like magic, but with money.
Exactly. Your money is literally making you more money even while you sleep.
And the best part is, switching to a high-yield savings account is usually a pretty simple process.
Right. You don't have to be a financial wizard to figure it out.
Not at all. A lot of banks and credit unions offer them, and you can even find some great online options these days.
Okay, so this is me adding to my to-do list as we speak because this feels like a no-brainer. So we're making our money work smarter, not harder, and then the guide throws us another curveball in a good way with step 9, which is all about those pesky subscriptions.
Ah, yes, subscriptions. The silent budget killer.
For real. It's amazing how quickly those monthly charges can add up without you even realizing it.
It's like death by 1,000 paper cuts,
The perfect analogy.
Well,
And I think what I appreciate about this step is that it's not about being anti-subscription altogether. It's about being more mindful of what you're actually using and what you're getting for your money.
exactly. Do you really need 5 different streaming services?
Okay, that's a good question. I plead the 5th.
It's about finding a balance, right?
Totally. And the guide even suggests looking into free alternatives where possible, which I thought was a nice touch.
Oh, absolutely. There are so many free resources available these days, you might be surprised what you can find.
Exactly. Okay, so we're saving smarter, we're being more mindful of our subscriptions, and then just when I thought I had a handle on things, the guide throws us this really interesting curveball, a connection between debt and decluttering.
Ah, yes, steps 10 and 11. I love this part.
Okay, so explain this connection for me, because at first glance it seemed a little random, but then it totally clicked.
It's brilliant, right? So obviously, the less debt you have, especially high interest debt, the more money you have available to put toward your emergency fund. That's a no-brainer.
Makes sense.
But then they take it a step further and suggest using decluttering as a way to generate some extra cash to throw at that debt or even directly into your savings.
Oh, right. And they specifically call out online selling platforms, which is genius.
Right. It's like a double whammy. You're getting rid of stuff you don't need and potentially making some money in the process.
I'm telling you, it's like finding hidden treasure. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here, and we've finally reached the last step in this 12-step guide, step 12, which focuses on the importance of regularly reviewing and adjusting your plan. And honestly, I think this might be the most important step of all.
Oh, absolutely. Because life is not static, right?
Exactly. Our income changes, our expenses change, our goals change.
Exactly. And this step reminds us that it's okay to adapt, to make adjustments as needed. It's not about being perfect. It's about staying flexible and committed to the overall goal.
And I think that's what I appreciate most about this guide. It's not about rigid rules and deprivation. It's about empowering yourself to take control of your finances and build a solid foundation for the future.
Couldn't have said it better myself. It's about building that peace of mind, knowing that you're prepared for whatever life throws your way.
And that is something we can all get behind. So there you have it, folks. 12 practical steps to building an emergency fund in less than a year. It's doable, it's empowering, and it just might change your whole relationship with money. Until next time, keep diving deep.